At dinner with friends, someone tells a story about their partner's private medical appointment. Everyone laughs at the punchline. In the car home, the partner says quietly, "I told you that in confidence." I felt exposed sitting at that table. The person who told the story goes silent, then says, "I am horrible. I ruined everything. You should not even be with me." Their face collapses. Their breathing changes. The injured partner immediately says, "No, you are not horrible. You are generous. Everyone knows you love me." Within 1 minute, the emotional direction has reversed. The person whose privacy was exposed is now protecting the other person's self-image. The public disclosure has not been understood, and no repair has been discussed. Yet the conversation feels too fragile to return to the original hurt.
I call this outcome comfort reversal. It does not tell us whether the distress is strategic. It does not diagnose a personality. It names a visible shift. Before the injury is addressed, comfort begins flowing from the injured person toward the person who caused it. The distress may be completely genuine. Realizing that we hurt someone can threaten a valued identity. I am kind, trustworthy, or safe. That threat can produce shame, panic, withdrawal, defensiveness, or global self-condemnation. Genuine emotion and an unhelpful conversational result can exist at the same time. Research often distinguishes guilt focused on behavior from shame focused on the whole self. Guilt sounds like, "I did something harmful." Shame sounds like, "I am fundamentally bad." The distinction is not absolute, but it helps explain why one state can support amends while the other can pull attention toward escape or self-protection.
That means we do not need to solve the mystery of intent. Asking, "Are they performing this breakdown?" can recreate the same kind of motive trial that damages conflict. A more reliable question is, what happened to responsibility after the breakdown began? Two experiences now require space. One person was harmed. The other feels shame about causing harm. Both matter, but they do not carry the same task. Shame deserves regulation. The injury still deserves acknowledgement, responsibility, and repair. Combining them can make the harmed person responsible for both. Global self-condemnation creates a conversational trap. If the injured person continues, they may feel cruel for attacking someone who is already down. If they offer reassurance, the immediate crisis settles, but the original issue loses its place. Relief arrives without repair.
3 observable tests can help. Can the apology stay specific about the behavior? Can it accurately acknowledge the impact without demanding correction? Can the apologizing person remain engaged long enough to offer a meaningful repair, even while feeling uncomfortable? The first test is specificity. I shared information you gave me privately is usable. "I am the worst partner in the world" is not. Specific language keeps responsibility attached to an action that can be understood, repaired, and changed. A total verdict on the self offers no practical handle. The second test is impact. Can the person say, "You trusted me, and I made you feel exposed in front of people whose opinions matter to you"? That sentence does not require agreeing with every interpretation. It demonstrates contact with the cost of the action.
The third test is repair. What will address the present harm and what will reduce recurrence? In this case, repair might include telling the friends that the story was not theirs to share, asking what correction the partner wants, and establishing a clear privacy check before future gatherings. A complete apology can therefore move through a sequence. Name what you did. Acknowledge its impact. Express regret without asking the injured person to manage your identity. Offer repair, and follow through. The words matter, but the sequence becomes credible through action. It could sound like this: "I shared something private because I wanted the laugh. That broke your trust and left you exposed. I'm sorry. I will message them tonight and make clear that I should not have told that story. Before I share anything personal again, I will ask you."
If global shame appears, the apologizing person can translate it back into responsibility. "I notice that I am turning this into a verdict on my whole character. I need a minute, but I do not want you to comfort me out of the issue. What I did was specific, and I will come back to it. The injured person can also interrupt the reversal without mocking the emotion. I hear that you feel awful. I am not saying you are awful. I need us to keep the focus on what happened and what repair looks like before I can take care of your feelings about it. Sometimes the nervous system needs a break. Then make the pause explicit. I am flooded and cannot respond without collapsing into self-attack. Give me 30 minutes. I will return at 8, summarize what I heard, and talk about repair. A pause is useful only if responsibility returns with the person.
The injured person is allowed to decline the role of immediate emotional caretaker. That is not cruelty. They may later have compassion for the other person's shame. Timing matters. Care offered after accountability lands differently from care required to make accountability possible. It is possible to hold both realities. I believe you are more than your worst action, and I will not erase the action to restore your good feeling about yourself. That balance protects dignity without asking the harmed person to pretend the harm was small. Research on effective apologies supports the importance of responsibility and repair. In experiments comparing apology components, acknowledgement of responsibility was especially influential, followed by an offer to repair. A request for forgiveness mattered less. That order is useful. Accountability does not begin by asking the injured person for a gift.
Other research shows that apologies can help restore trust through perceived trustworthiness. But the effect is not automatic or identical in every emotional context. A spoken apology is not a reset button. The recipient's remaining distress, the kind of violation, and later behavior all matter. Do not label every overwhelmed apology a comfort reversal pattern. Someone may cry, need a pause, and still return with clear responsibility. Someone may briefly say, I feel terrible, then stay present. The issue is not whether emotion appears. It is whether emotion repeatedly removes the injury from the conversation. Look across incidents. When you raise harm, do you regularly end up defending the person's goodness, calming their panic, or apologizing for making them feel guilty? Does the practical repair vanish once they feel better? A repeated role reversal carries more information than one imperfect apology.
There are safety and trauma nuances. Intense shame may connect to prior abuse, depression, or other mental health difficulties. Compassion and professional support may help, but a partner should not be made solely responsible for stabilizing another person, especially when threats of self-harm are used or feared. Contact appropriate crisis support when safety is at risk. For lower-risk, everyday conflict, schedule a repair check rather than declaring success at the first apology. Ask the injured person later, did the correction help? Is there anything still exposed? What would rebuild trust over time? Repair can require follow-up because impact rarely obeys the timing of regret. Return to the dinner story. The apologizing partner sends a simple message to the friends. I shared private information that was not mine to share. Please do not repeat it. Then they ask their partner whether any further correction is wanted, without demanding reassurance that the relationship is fine.
A week later, they check in. I have been more careful, but I want to know whether you still feel guarded around me. The question stays with the injured person's experience. It does not turn the answer into a referendum on whether the apologizing person is good enough. The deepest sign of repair is not the intensity of remorse. It is the capacity to remain present with another person's reality without collapsing, counterattacking, or recruiting them as a rescuer. Responsibility becomes steadier when it can tolerate discomfort without turning discomfort into the new emergency. A healthy apology does not require anyone to be declared a bad person. It keeps the moral focus smaller and more demanding. This action caused harm. The harm deserves attention. The person who caused it can help repair it. Comfort may come later. Responsibility should not have to disappear first.